We're going to look at the process called completing the square. Completing the square is a method we use to solve a quadratic. So for example, suppose that we had the quadratic we see here. X squared plus 8x plus 6 is equal to 15. Well, we're going to represent that by these tiles here. So suppose this represents, the blue tile represents x squared. Looks a little distorted, but it represents a square where each side is equal to x. Here we have the term 8x represented by 8 rectangular tiles, each of which has a width of 1 and a height of x, giving it an area equal to 8x. We represent the 6 by these 6 squares, each of which is 1 by 1, and we represent the 15 by 15 squares, each of which is 1 by 1. The first step here is we will subtract 6 from both sides. So we're clearing away anything from the left side that does not have an x in it. So we started with x squared plus 8x plus 6 is equal to 15. We subtracted 6 from both sides to get x squared plus 8x is equal to 9. The next thing we're going to do, and this is really the key, is we start to create a square that no longer will have side lengths equal to x, but will have side lengths equal to x plus half of the coefficient of the x term. So the x term in this case had a coefficient of 8. So our square is going to be equal to x plus 4 times x plus 4. So you can see we broke up our middle term into two parts, 4x and 4x. We piled them one to the right, one on top. But notice that we're missing a piece here. So to complete the square, we have to add something to this left side. And what you can see is that this square has a height of 4 and a width of 4. So that means we're going to have to add 4 by 4 or 16. When we do that, we also have to add 16 to the right side. So when we do that now, we have a new equation in the form of x plus 4 squared is equal to, now it's not equal to 9 as it was before, but it's equal to 9 plus 16 or 25. So you can see we now have a square here, and the dimensions of that square are x plus 4 times x plus 4. So what we're saying is that the area of that square is equal to the area of these purple squares here. In other words, x plus 4 squared is equal to 25. Our next step then, we start to solve here, and we see that we now have that x plus 4 squared is equal to 25, which means that x plus 4 is equal to positive or negative 5, and therefore x is equal to negative 4 plus 5, or negative 4 minus 5, giving us values of 1 and negative 9. Okay, that's the method for completing the square. Okay, we want to look at a couple special of ideas here. So let's go back, let's change our equation, and let's look at the equation that we'll see most commonly, which is what happens when the right side is set equal to 0. Well, nothing really changes. The first step again, and let's change some of these other numbers too. Let's make it x squared plus 8x plus 10 is equal to 0. So again, the first step is we subtract 10 from both sides, which gives us x squared plus 8x is equal to negative 10. Then we break up our 8x into two 4x boxes and start to create a square that will have dimensions equal to, again, x plus 4. Again, we have a missing 4 by 4 piece, so we have to add 16 to the left to create that square, add 16 to the right, which now gives us a value of 6. So now we have that x plus 4 squared is equal to 6. Okay, when we take the next step and solve, we're going to get that x plus 4 is equal to positive or negative square root of 6, and x therefore is equal to negative 4 plus the square root of 6, and x is equal to negative 4 minus the square root of 6. So let's think for a minute about how much of the solution here we can determine just by looking at the numbers in the original equation? Well, the first thing to recognize is that the number -4, which appears in both solutions, is equal to half of this middle term multiplied by -1. So the middle term here, the coefficient is 8. So half of that multiplied by -1 is -4 and -4. But let's think about this other number here. So the C value is equal to 10. The question is, how could we have predicted what this number would be, the square root of 6, and in this case, the negative square root of 6? So let's think about that for a little bit. Okay, so let's think about the process we went through again here. The first thing we did was we subtracted 10 from both sides. So the number on the right here, the first thing we did to get it was to subtract the 10 from both sides. The next thing that we did to change the number on the right side was we added 16. So we took half this number of the 8 and we squared it. We added that to both sides. So think about it again. The number here, 6, is equal to the number here, which we call C, minus the number here, or rather, it's the number 8 squared, half of 8 squared, which is 16, minus 10. That gives us this number here. So let's try another one and see if it ends up giving us our solution. Okay, so we've changed the equation, so we now have x squared minus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. And what we wanted to do was try to predict the final solution just by looking at the numbers of this equation here. So what we said was that we're going to end up with the solution equal to half of this number, the -4, which would be 2, plus or minus some number. That number, we said, to figure that out, let's think again about what we did. So the first thing we did was we subtracted 3 from both sides, which gave us -3. Then we took this number, -4, we took half of it, and we squared it. And that number we added to both sides. So we've subtracted 3 and we've added 2 squared. So that means that our solution should have plus or minus 1 in it. So let's go through and take a look and see whether that in fact happens. So here we get our solution, and we see that we end up with a solution of 2 plus 1 and 2 minus 1, which gives the two solutions of 3 and 1. Okay, so let's review that one more time. Let's try a different set of equations, or a different equation here. Go back to a positive value here. And okay, so let's try this one. X squared plus 4x plus 10. So according to our method, the solution is going to be x is equal to -2, which is half of the 4 negated. So x is going to be equal to -2 plus or minus a number equal to, again, half of the 4, that number squared, which gives us 2 squared, or 4, minus 10, which would give us a -6. So that means we're saying our solution will be -2 plus or minus the square root of -6. And there we are, -2 plus the square root of -6, -2 minus the square root of -6. By the way, we don't currently have a way of finding a square root of -6. So in this case, what we would say is that in the real numbers, there is no solution to this quadratic.